It's the president's annual ball, and as you're lining up to go in, they commentate on TV as the people go in. It's all filmed. And as I went in and shook the president's hand, they said, "Oh, this is the British ambassador. He speaks Estonian and he sings in a choir, and he's basically one of us." I've definitely, over time, become quite well known in Estonia. So early on, I went on TV ahead of an England-Denmark football game as a sort of pundit in the studio. And then I think people were quite pleasantly surprised that a newly arrived ambassador already spoke the language. The main football commentator there, who commentates on Premier League games, got in touch with me and he said, "Do you want?" And he said, "I heard you speak Estonian. Would you like to co-commentate with me on a Premier League game?" And he said, "Who do you support?" And I support Crystal Palace. So I said, "Right, it needs to be a Palace match." And he said, "Fine." So we'd ended up doing Crystal Palace West Ham a couple of years ago. I was quite nervous about it. Obviously, it's in a foreign language and it's live. And then I prepared loads of material. I thought I'll have lots of stuff ready to use just in case. And then for this particular match, kickoff was delayed by 15 minutes. So while the kickoff was delayed, this guy basically asked me all the questions that we prepared. And that meant before the match even started, I kind of run out of useful stuff to say. But it was a sort of bucket list thing as well. I can put on my CV at some point. Not many people have co-commentated on a Premier League game in Estonian. And I think that the language is really, really important in Estonia. So for a long time, it wasn't an independent country. It was occupied by lots of other countries, and it's got long, convoluted history. But language is kind of crucial to their identity. And they also know that the language is really hard for foreigners to learn. It's famously quite tricky. So if you do a half-decent job, they really, really appreciate that. But one year I was going into this annual ball they do for it's the president's annual ball. And as you're lining up to go in, they commentate on TV as the people go in. It's all filmed. And as I went in and shook the president's hand, they said, one of my friends told me, they said in Estonian, "Oh, this is the British ambassador. He speaks Estonian and he sings in a choir, and he's basically one of us." As a diplomat, particularly as an ambassador, you kind of want people in that country to think that you're almost one of them, or at least you really, appreciate their culture. The balancing act, though, as a diplomat, is you do want them to feel like that towards you, but you obviously need to remember who you work for. And I'm really crystal clear that I work for the UK government, and if I have to go in and argue with the Estonian government about something, then I will do, and they know that. I doubt I think if I hadn't been out in Estonia on my posting as ambassador, I don't think I'd have ended up becoming a reservist, because I think it was the consciousness of being on NATO's eastern flank. I'm not exaggerating that. I live in Tallinn. Tallinn's lovely. It's not like I'm on the border or anything, so I wouldn't overdo that. But there is a definite different sense of consciousness of the threat in Estonia. And then also my job, day to day, I spent a lot of time interacting with the British military, because that's a big focus of the job. So I think without that, it might not have occurred to me, or it might have stayed in the back of my mind, but I might not have acted on it. But definitely that's part of what led me to become a reservist, was definitely the fact that I was out in Estonia and dealing lots with the British military, who are great.
Your first day in the Foreign Office, can you tell us when that was?
Yeah, so I joined, there was a group of us, maybe about a dozen, joined together, and we joined on the 10th of September 2001. So obviously September the 11th happened on day two. Someone was briefing us on things that we needed to know as brand new entrants into the Foreign Office, and then they came back into the room with a really sort of awful look on their face and said, "Right, you all just need to go home, because we all, those of us training you, need to go and do other things." And I remember we mostly went to a nearby cafe somewhere and saw what was happening on TV, and it was sort of, obviously a completely shocking incident, and really I think in my career, the things that have defined, the really big events that have defined my career and what's impacted what I've done, probably September 11th on day two, and then things like the financial crisis, Brexit as the sort of key turning points in different ways, or things that have affected obviously the UK a lot, but also how we carry out our foreign policy and how I've done my work. My very first job in the office was doing nuclear non-proliferation, including non-proliferation treaties to do with nuclear weapons. And as soon as 9/11 happened, the level of interest in safeguarding nuclear material obviously massively increased. So there was a lot more pressure to deliver what we needed to deliver, because there was suddenly much more concern about if Al-Qaeda were willing to fly planes into buildings, then what would they do if they could get their hands on nuclear material? So suddenly there was more money for what we were doing, but a lot more pressure to deliver. When I did my first posting in Jerusalem, I was there 2004 to 7, so I'd done language training first, some of that in Jordan, and then sort of moved west across the River Jordan, and I was based in our consulate in East Jerusalem. And my patch, as it were, the consulate covers the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza. And at that time, I spent quite a lot of time in Gaza. It was a great first job, or first posting for a diplomat. So I would get an armoured car, drive down to the crossing and go in. It would take some time, but get into Gaza and go and meet people in Gaza, find out what was happening in Gaza, build networks, get information, that sort of thing. And then there was always the risk that you'd get stuck. Like the crossing it back into Israel could close. I mean, I wish more had changed there, and that things were going a lot better than they are, because obviously I still have friends in that part of the world, and I wish desperately that things were a lot better there. But it was a really fascinating job. It was a great place to start.
You stay so grounded.
Probably a common answer to that is family. They're quite good at sort of puncturing any pomposity. So I have kids who are currently 10, 8 and 6, and they're good. They sort of keep me sane and normal and relatively human. Yeah, sometimes it's strange. You sort of deal at one point, have a meeting with the president in Estonia or the prime minister or something, and then I get a phone call saying, we need more. We've run out of milk, and can you get stuff on the way home, or can you pick one of the kids up and take them to a play date or something? So most of the time I'm outside work, just being a sort of normal dad. I think the best thing about being an ambassador is there is no typical day. So a day could look like hosting some sort of business breakfast where I live, like bringing lots of business people together to talk about investing in the UK. Or then I could be going to a school to talk to a load of Estonian school kids about the UK and Estonia. Then it's things like going to talk to the foreign ministry there or the defence ministry about sort of current policy issues. It might be Russia, like sanctions on Russia, and then maybe hosting something in the evening. It could be that we have a minister come out, so it could be hosting a British minister for a dinner, or often, in my case, like going to visit the British military out in the field. So every day is different. I love the variety. I'm definitely going to miss it when I'm done. I think about legacy in two different ways. I think the first one is sort of to do with UK and Estonia, and hopefully I'll leave a good legacy in the sense that the relationship now is really, really strong. My legacy sort of internally, or in terms of the organisation, is hopefully having encouraged, first of all, lots of people around the UK from really different backgrounds to consider the FCDO as a career option for them. I've been quite active getting out and about, talking to schools and universities and so on, trying to get people to think of the FCDO as a potential career for them. And then also within the organisation, trying to sort of encourage colleagues and support colleagues to go for opportunities or to get the opportunities that they want, and to help them get the overseas postings they want or the promotions, so that overall we genuinely represent the UK. We actually represent the UK in its entirety as best we can. I will definitely miss Estonia lots. It's been fantastic. One of the things I like to do when I'm back, I always bring Estonian chocolate with me. They make fantastic chocolate, and they're among the world's biggest chocolate eaters. And I actually have with me some of the best chocolate that they make. Kalev are the company, and this is Eesti, which is the Estonian word for Estonia. And it's got lots of Estonian national symbols on it, like a wolf and a cornflower and windmills and things like that. So that is some Estonian chocolate for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.